The Galactic Empire had dominated the known universe for centuries, its banners flying high over countless worlds. Their technological superiority was unmatched, their armies vast, and their confidence unshaken. To them, humanity was just another insignificant species in a long line of conquered civilizations. Earth was annexed without a fight, its defenses crumbling in the face of overwhelming firepower. Humans were mocked relentlessly. The Empire's officers jeered at Earth's primitive military traditions, laughing at the idea of snipers, soldiers who relied on patience and precision in a war dominated by energy cannons and automated drones. To the Empire, it was a symbol of humanity's backwardness, a reminder of why resistance was futile. The galactic broadcasts depicted humans training with old, outdated rifles, the footage interspersed with laughter and commentary about how quaint their tactics were. Imagine thinking a single bullet could change the tide of a battle, an alien commentator said with a sneer. Pathetic, really? Their arrogance was absolute. The Empire's generals openly claimed that humans could never pose a threat, not with their outdated weaponry and their fragile bodies. Even the sight of a human with a sniper rifle became a running joke among the troops, a punchline to their superiority. But amidst the oppression, humanity's pride lingered in quiet corners. Old soldiers, retired and forgotten, still remembered what it meant to fight. In one remote settlement on Earth, where the Empire's presence was minimal but its influence suffocating, an aging man lived alone. His name had been lost to time, but among those who knew him, he was simply called the Old Sniper. Once, he had been a legend, a soldier whose patience and precision had turned tides in battles fought between men. Now, he lived in obscurity, a relic of a world that no longer had a place for him. His hands, though wrinkled and scarred, still remembered the feel of a rifle. His eyes, though weathered, could still find a target from a distance no machine could replicate. He had no illusions about humanity's plight. He had seen the destruction wrought by the Empire firsthand, watched as entire cities fell, their inhabitants either enslaved or executed. Resistance seemed futile, an act of defiance with no chance of success. And yet, a part of him couldn't let go of the old ways, the belief that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a single individual could make a difference. The Empire's presence in his village had been limited to occasional patrols. Most days, they left the humans alone, secure in the knowledge that fear kept them in line. But that security shattered when a squad of alien soldiers arrived, searching for evidence of rebellion. They claimed the settlement was harboring insurgents, though there was no proof to support their accusations. The aliens' disdain for humans didn't require justification. The Old Sniper watched from the shadows as the patrol began its work. They rounded up villagers, interrogating them with cold efficiency. When answers didn't come quickly enough, they resorted to violence. He heard the screams of a young woman being dragged from her home, the cries of an elderly man beaten for hesitating to respond. His hands clenched into fists, but he remained hidden, his instincts keeping him alive. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Empire's troops, frustrated by the lack of cooperation, executed a family in the center of the village square. Parents and children lined up and shot without hesitation. It wasn't just a demonstration of power, it was a message. The Old Sniper felt something inside him snap. As he stood in the shadow of his small home, he made a decision. He was old, yes, and the world had moved on from his kind of warfare. But he hadn't forgotten how to fight. If the Empire wanted to mock humanity's snipers, he would show them why such mockery was a mistake. He retreated to a hidden cache he had kept for years, buried beneath the floorboards of his home. Inside was an old rifle, battered and worn, but still functional. It wasn't much compared to the energy weapons the aliens wielded, but in his hands, it was deadly. Alongside it were a few rounds of ammunition, a relic of a bygone era. As he cleaned and prepared his weapon, the memories flooded back. The long hours spent in training, learning to hold his breath, to steady his aim, to see the world through the scope as if nothing else existed. He remembered the camaraderie of his fellow soldiers, the pride they took in their craft. By the time he was finished, The rifle felt like an extension of himself once more. The weight of it in his hands was familiar, comforting. He had no illusions about what he was about to do. The odds were insurmountable, and the cost of failure was death. But he couldn't stand by any longer. The old sniper took a deep breath and stepped out into the night, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The village was quiet now, the echoes of the day's violence lingering in the air. He moved with the practiced silence of a predator, his footsteps barely making a sound. He found a position on a ridge overlooking the village square, the same place where the executions had taken place. From here, he had a clear view of the alien soldiers, their bright armor glinting under the moonlight. He set up his rifle, his movements deliberate and precise. As he peered through the scope, his focus narrowed. The world faded away until only the target remained. His breathing slowed, each exhale steadying his aim. The leader of the alien patrol stood at the center of the square, barking orders to his subordinates. The old sniper placed his crosshairs over the alien's chest, then adjusted for the head. For a moment he hesitated. The weight of his decision pressed down on him. But then he thought of the family that had been executed, the screams that still echoed in his mind. His finger tightened on the trigger. The shot rang out, sharp and decisive. The alien leader dropped instantly, his body crumpling to the ground. For a second, there was silence, the soldiers frozen in shock. Then chaos erupted as they scrambled for cover, their shouts filling the night. But by the time they began to search for the source of the shot, the old sniper was gone, fading back into the shadows like a ghost. It had begun. The old sniper retreated to the wilderness, his mind racing as he prepared for what was to come. He knew the Empire would not take the death of one of their own lightly. They would respond with fury, their forces scouring the area in search of the lone human who dared challenge their dominance. That was exactly what he wanted. He spent the next few hours studying the terrain. The forests and hills around the village became his battleground. Every rise, every shadow, every stretch of dense underbrush was imprinted in his mind. He didn't need the technology the Empire relied on. He had the land, his experience, and the element of surprise. The patrol arrived at dawn, their arrogance still intact despite the previous night's loss. They moved in a tight formation, their weapons drawn, scanning the surroundings with thermal optics and advanced sensors. The old sniper watched them from a concealed position high on a rocky outcrop, his rifle resting steadily on a bipod. He waited. Patience had always been his greatest weapon. Minutes turned to hours as he remained perfectly still, his breathing measured, his eyes locked on his scope. The aliens moved cautiously, their chatter over comms betraying their growing unease. They expected to find an amateur, a desperate human with no real skill. They had no idea what they were up against. Finally, the moment came. The alien officer leading the patrol paused, raising a hand to give orders. The old sniper's crosshairs settled over him. He adjusted for distance and wind, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. One shot, one kill. The crack of the rifle echoed through the forest, and the officer dropped. Chaos erupted among the troops. They dove for cover, shouting orders, their weapons firing blindly into the trees. The old sniper had already relocated, his years of training making the process instinctive. He moved silently through the underbrush, finding a new position before they could pinpoint his previous one. Another shot. Another alien fell. The panic among the soldiers grew. Their advanced optics and scanners couldn't detect him. The terrain worked against their technology, masking his movements. The old sniper had turned their arrogance into a weakness, exploiting their over-reliance on tools they didn't fully understand. As the sun rose higher, the aliens began to falter. Their formation broke apart as fear took hold. The old sniper could hear their frantic comms, their disbelief that a single human could cause such damage. He remained calm, picking his targets with precision, each shot calculated to sow further confusion. By midday, the patrol was in full retreat, dragging their dead and wounded with them. The old sniper watched them go, his rifle resting against his shoulder. He didn't feel triumph. There was no joy in taking lives. But he felt a grim satisfaction knowing that he had sent a message. Humanity wasn't as weak as the Empire believed. The Empire's response was swift. Reinforcements arrived within hours, their ships casting shadows over the forest as they deployed additional troops. They spread out in a methodical search pattern, determined to find the human who had embarrassed them. The old sniper adapted. He set traps along their routes, simple but effective devices that slowed their progress and forced them to move cautiously. He used decoys to mislead their scanners, creating false signals that drew their attention away from his true position. His attacks continued, each one as precise as the last. He targeted officers and specialists, knowing that the loss of leadership would cripple their efforts. The soldiers became increasingly paranoid, their fear growing with every unseen strike. The old sniper didn't need to kill them all, he just needed to break their morale. By nightfall, the forest was silent once more. The old sniper sat beneath a tree, his rifle resting beside him, his body weary but his resolve unshaken. He had survived another day, but he knew the fight was far from over. The Empire's arrogance had been dented, but their fury would only grow. Still, he couldn't stop. He had become something more than just a soldier. He was a symbol, a reminder that humanity still had fight left in it. For the first time in years, the old sniper felt a spark of hope. One man, one rifle, against an empire. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Word of the old sniper's defiance spread beyond the forest, carried by whispers among the scattered remnants of humanity. The resistance, a fractured network of rebels struggling to survive against the Empire's oppression, began to take notice. Stories of a single man taking on entire squads of Imperial soldiers, armed with nothing but an ancient rifle, became a beacon of hope. To the Empire, his actions were an unacceptable humiliation. Reinforcements continued to pour into the area, transforming the forest into a battleground. The old sniper was no longer just a rogue human, he was now a priority target. High-ranking officers arrived to oversee the operation, their pride stung by the thought that a single human had outmaneuvered their elite troops. The sniper, however, remained elusive. He understood that survival wasn't about brute force, but outthinking the enemy. He avoided direct confrontation whenever possible, relying on his knowledge of the terrain and his ability to disappear after every attack. He moved like a ghost, striking swiftly and then fading into the wilderness before the aliens could react. The Empire's frustration mounted. They resorted to more aggressive tactics, setting fire to sections of the forest and deploying drones to hunt him down. But for every move they made, the old sniper had a counter. He used the smoke from their fires to mask his movements, striking from unexpected angles. He ambushed the drones, taking them down with precise shots before they could relay his position. Despite his success, the strain was beginning to show. Supplies were dwindling, and exhaustion gnawed at the edges of his resolve. He had no allies, no reinforcements of his own. Every shot he fired brought him closer to running out of ammunition, and every move he made carried the risk of discovery. It was during one of his brief moments of rest that the resistance found him. A small group of rebels, inspired by his actions, had tracked him down, offering aid and supplies. They were young, inexperienced, and ill-equipped, but their determination mirrored his own. For the first time, the old sniper wasn't alone. The rebels brought news of the Empire's broader plans. The old sniper's defiance had drawn attention not just locally, but across the region. The Empire was preparing to deploy heavier forces, including mechanized units and orbital strikes, to eliminate him once and for all. It was a measure of their desperation and a testament to the impact of his actions. The old sniper knew this was a turning point. Alone, he could continue to harass the enemy, but he would eventually be overwhelmed. With the rebels, he had the chance to strike a decisive blow. He began to train them, passing on the skills he had honed over decades. They weren't soldiers, not yet, but they were quick learners, and their passion made up for their lack of experience. Together, they devised a plan. The Empire had established a command post on the outskirts of the forest, a fortified position where their officers coordinated the hunt. Taking it out would disrupt their operations and buy humanity more time. It was a daring mission, one that required precision and coordination. The night of the attack, the old sniper led the way. He provided covering fire from a concealed position, taking out sentries and disabling automated defenses with well-placed shots. The rebels moved in under the cover of darkness, planting charges and sabotaging key systems. The assault was chaotic and brutal. The rebels suffered losses, their inexperience showing in the heat of battle. But their courage never wavered, and under the old sniper's guidance, they succeeded. The command post was destroyed in a series of explosions that lit up the night sky, and the surviving rebels retreated into the forest. The Empire's response was immediate and furious. Troops flooded the area, their anger driving them to reckless action. But the damage was done. The loss of their command post threw their forces into disarray, and their hunt for the old sniper faltered. For the first time, the Empire had been forced onto the defensive. The old sniper and his rebels faded back into the wilderness, their spirits bolstered by their victory. They knew the fight wasn't over, but they had proven something important. Humanity wasn't broken. The old sniper had become more than just a soldier. He was a symbol of resistance, a reminder that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them to the strength of human determination, and now they were paying the price. The Empire's forces regrouped, their fury tempered by a newfound respect for their opponent. The old sniper had become a name whispered in fear among their ranks, a phantom whose presence turned even the most disciplined soldiers into nervous wrecks. They launched a final campaign to end him, deploying overwhelming firepower and advanced reconnaissance teams to scour every inch of the forest. This time, failure was not an option. The old sniper watched their preparations from the safety of his hidden perch. He could see the scale of their mobilization and knew that this time, there would be no escape. They were coming for him with everything they had, determined to root him out and end the defiance he symbolized. He gathered the remaining rebels, their numbers diminished, but their spirits unbroken. They had fought hard, and each of them carried the scars of battle. They looked to him now, their trust absolute. He didn't sugarcoat the reality of their situation. The odds were impossible, and survival was unlikely. But their actions had already sparked something greater. Across the region, human settlements were rising up, inspired by their resistance. If they could hold the Empire's attention just a little longer, others might have a chance to fight back. They set their final plan into motion. The old sniper led his team deeper into the forest, using the terrain to his advantage one last time. The rebels worked tirelessly to create a network of traps and diversions, designed to slow the Empire's advance and draw their forces into vulnerable positions. Every tree, every shadow became part of their strategy. When the Empire's troops entered the forest, they found themselves walking into a nightmare. Explosions erupted from hidden mines, taking out entire squads. Tripwires triggered avalanches of rocks and debris. The rebels struck from the shadows, using hit-and-run tactics to whittle down their numbers. Every step forward came at a cost, and the soldiers' fear grew with each ambush. The old sniper was at the center of it all, his rifle never missing its mark. He targeted commanders and specialists, leaving the remaining troops leaderless and disorganized. Each shot was a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming power, a single individual could make a difference. But the Empire was relentless. Their sheer numbers and firepower slowly began to overwhelm the rebels' defenses. The forest, once their ally, became a battlefield littered with the bodies of both humans and aliens. The rebels fought with everything they had, but one by one, they fell. The old sniper pressed on, refusing to let despair take hold. He moved like a ghost, striking from unexpected angles and vanishing before the enemy could respond. His movements bought the remaining rebels precious time, allowing them to regroup and strike again. Finally, the Empire closed in on his position. He was cornered, his ammunition nearly exhausted, his body weary from days of relentless fighting. But he stood his ground, his rifle steady in his hands. The soldiers approached cautiously, their fear evident despite their superior numbers. As the first squad moved into view, he took a shot. One soldier fell, then another. The rest hesitated, their confidence shaken by the sight of their comrades dropping so easily. The old sniper used the moment to reposition, firing again and again, each shot as precise as the last. But even he couldn't hold them off forever. As the Empire's troops closed in, he knew his time was running out. He didn't fear death. He had accepted it long ago. What mattered was the message he left behind. With his final shots, he took down the last of the advancing officers, leaving the remaining soldiers leaderless and disoriented. Then, with the last of his strength, he triggered the final trap, a massive explosion that engulfed the area, taking out the Empire's remaining forces. When the smoke cleared, the battlefield was silent. The old sniper was gone, his body lost in the wreckage. But his legacy remained. The Empire's defeat in the forest had cost them dearly, both in resources and morale. Across the galaxy, the story of the old sniper spread, inspiring other humans to rise up and fight back. He had become more than just a soldier. He was a legend, a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. The Empire had mocked human snipers, believing them to be relics of a primitive past. But in the end, it was one old sniper who shattered their troops and reminded them that even the smallest spark could ignite a rebellion.